We just need now to, just finish it off completely, and he's being vindicated now.
Adel Fahmy reacting to the news that his brother, Al-Jazeera journalist Mohammed Fahmy, will be released on bail. It was announced in a Cairo court today. Now, Fahmy still could face a retrial starting February 23rd, but some observers believe it's more likely Fahmy will be allowed to leave the country. Egypt has accused Fahmy of aiding a terrorist organization. Those charges have been roundly condemned in international circles. Joining me now with more reaction is Al Jazeera journalist Sue Turton. She was a member of the Al Jazeera team in Egypt. In fact, she was convicted in absentia and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sue Turton joins me now from Doha. Sue, tell me what's in your heart today.
You know what, Suhana? It's with great relief, really. We'd been waiting for so long for the Egyptian judicial system to recognise that, well, really, that our guys were not a threat to the general public. And the fact that when we went through the first trial, they refused them bail time and time again and kept them incarcerated. At least now they are out, they can feel the sunshine, they can go and see their families. Baha Mohammed, the producer, can go and see his 6-month-old son, who he hasn't hugged, who he hasn't been able to watch grow up because, of course, he was in jail when he was born. And Mohammed Fahmy can go and see his fiancée, who he's planning a wedding with. So great relief, but of course it's not over. We still now have this retrial to go through, and of course it's only been adjourned until the 23rd of February.
I can certainly hear the emotion in your voice. It must have been quite a toll, not only for Mohammed Fahmy and Bahar, as you mentioned, but also for his colleagues, you included, watching all of this unfold.
It has been such a roller coaster, really. I mean, 411 days is a long time to try and keep fighting for their release. Much longer for them sitting in a prison cell looking out, of course. But it's been a long wait to see Egypt turn this corner. We had the first glimmer that this may be the case in early January, when the appeal court judges sat down and looked at all the evidence, and they came out with a ruling that said, really, they should never have been arrested in the first place, never mind put in jail for all this time and convicted for these charges of aiding and abetting a terrorist organisation. Crazy, really. And this is what the appeal court saw when they looked at the evidence, when they looked at the reasons that they came into the hotel rooms that the guys were working out of and arrested them back in December 2013. So, I guess it's just we're breathing again. We can sort of say, OK, we think maybe the end is in sight. We're not there yet, but we can see it.
I know you've been messaging, or at least in communication with your Australian journalist colleague, Peter Gresta. He was released as well. He was in with Mohammed Fahmy, with Bahar Mohammed. What is his reaction today?
I mean, it's really tough for Peter, because he really thought when he left that Mohammed Fahmy would be hard on his heels, if you like. The Australians and the Canadians were all talking to the Egyptian government to try and get them deported. And when he got out, I think he thought that the Canadians were putting as much pressure on. Now, it's been questioned whether that was indeed the case and whether the Canadian Prime Minister really was pulling his finger out, if you like, to try and make that happen. And as it didn't happen, as Mohammed Fahmy wasn't deported, we were all beginning to fear that indeed that was him really left in that prison. And so Peter Gresta, I think, watched and thought, oh no, I'm out and they're not coming out. And then he saw today, and his message to me was, at last, the Egyptians recognised that our two guys are not a threat to the public. They're not terrorists, they're journalists. And he was just relieved that he can now feel that they can go and be hugged by their family. That's what he said to me. I've had these hugs now for over a week. He wants them to feel that same hug.
Oh, I'm sure people are still hugging Peter because they missed him so badly. You mentioned Canada's Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. There has been criticism coming from, various parties that perhaps Canada has not done enough to try to get Mohammed Fahmy out or released. But what are your thoughts on that?
From what I understand, there was a Canadian delegation that was trying to work the same magic that the Australians worked. But there is this question as to whether it went all the way to the top and whether the phone was picked up, whether the pressure was really put on from the Prime Ministerial office and for him himself. And I think we're still questioning whether that was done. It doesn't sound like it was. That's certainly the message we're getting from outside, looking in and speaking to those who are within those circles. But I think there's another thing that came to play here as well. I don't think it was just that fact. I think the Egyptian media were slightly aghast when they saw Peter deported. They were expecting him to be kept in Australian custody, to possibly be put out on bail in Australia, to be looking at some sort of judicial process, maybe a retrial, to at least examine the evidence against him, because that seemed to be the deal that was being done with this deportation. And of course, Peter was released and he's a free man. Straight away, he became a free man. There was a bit of a backlash in Egypt because of that. And I think that possibly that has filtered to the prosecutor, who suddenly realised that actually there was a question mark as to whether the Canadian should be released as well, to whether Mohamed Fahmy should be on a plane as well, because it just left an Egyptian in prison. It just left Baha Mohammed. And people in the Egyptian media were questioning, why should the Egyptian be the one left to carry the can, if you like? So I think lots of things really built up over the last few days, meaning that the deportation went off the rails. But there is still a chance that it could be back on the rails. Certainly I know that that's what Mohamed Fahmy's camp are now pushing for, that Canada just goes that extra mile and gets him out, and so he can be deported and he can watch the retrial from Toronto and not from Cairo.
Sue, I'm so glad you took the time to talk to us. You're a wealth of information and I appreciate your honesty. Thank you. Al Jazeera journalist Sue Turton speaking with me from Doha.